Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson. Gray. Mr. President.
Here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for remarks that I will make.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I just want to say a few comments about the fact we're now back in the legislative chamber. We want to thank the Building Commission, Council members Melton and Harding for their service on that to help facilitate some new technology that'll help these meetings go hopefully better. We ask for your patience as we're working with our new technology and continuing to adapt to the internet participation remotely by applicants, the representatives, and people who wish to speak on agenda items. The other thing I want to talk about is that we still have a long way to go in this whole COVID-19 situation. And even though things may be opening up and signs that in certain ways progress is being made, remember that doesn't mean you should just totally let your guard down and start going back to the way you were. Keep in mind that distancing is always the best approach at this point. And until you hear otherwise from the governor, then that's what we should be doing. So, Madam Clerk.
An affidavit of publication is on file for this meeting, and a current copy of the Open Meeting Act is posted in a white binder on the east wall of the legislative chambers.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The City Council welcomes you. We thank you for joining us, whether in person or online. As a courtesy to those in attendance, we ask that you turn off or silence all electronic devices. And if you're listening in online and registered to participate through the Zoom platform, you'll notice that the microphone feature has been muted by the city clerk. Once your agenda item that you're registered to speak on is called and the public hearing is opened, we will then be calling on the people in the Zoom room, so to speak, first. Once we get through the people who have registered to speak through Zoom, we will then open up the public hearing to people here in the chamber. Once the public hearing is concluded, and if you have not just spoken here but through Zoom, you will be muted again, and your microphone will remain muted until a council member calls on you to speak to be recognized. The rules of the City Council are we have the public hearing. Once the public hearing is closed, after that time, council members, if you are called upon, then you can speak again and you'll be unmuted if you're watching. If you want to wave because you have something you feel important that you want to say, it's just like here. You can hit the wave button on your Zoom, or you can literally wave to us and we'll see you because you'll still be called up. Madam Clerk.
Item 6, a resolution to approve the preliminary plat for MPS 210 and Q Campus Replat 1, located southwest of George B. Lake Parkway and West Q Road. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
The public hearing on item 6 begins at this time. Are there any proponents? Are there any opponents? Oh, come on down.
Good afternoon. Joe Zadina with Lamper Anderson here on behalf of Millard Public Schools, 14710 West Dodge Road. Just here to answer any questions that the council may have.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents or opponents on item 6? The public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Harding. Yes. Melton. Yes. Pauls. Yes. Palermo. Yes. Festerson. Yes. Gray. Yes. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 6 is approved, 7-0. Items 7 and 8 relate to the same project and can be considered together for Jean Leahy Mall Replat 1, located northeast of 13th and Farnham Streets. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. Item 7 is a resolution to approve the preliminary plat for Jean Leahy Mall Replat 1. Item 8, a resolution to approve the final plat for Jean Leahy Mall Replat 1.
The public hearings on items 7 and 8 begin at this time. Are there any proponents?
Christine, HDR Engineering, 1917 South 67th Street, on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents on this item?
Is there a Patrick Butler here?
I'm sorry, sir. Are you wishing to be recognized?
With the city.
I'm not asking you that. Are you wishing to speak on items number 7 and 8?
7 and 8 of the Jean Leahy Mall?
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay, so we go agenda item by agenda item, so please wait until the agenda.
5 replat done already?
Jim, will you explain the listing, please? We're going to have someone speak with you, but we're going to continue the meeting while you're doing that. Public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson. Gray. Mr. President.
Yes.
Items 7 and 8 are approved, 7-0. Items 9 to 11 relate to the same project and can be considered together for OPA campus located northwest and southwest of 11th and Dodge Streets. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. B is communication and opposition. Item 9, an ordinance to rezone this property from DS District and CBD District to CBD District. Item 10, a resolution to approve the final plat for OPA campus. Item 11, a resolution to approve the OPA campus subdivision agreement.
Public hearings on items 9 through 11 begin at this time. Madam Clerk, we have Mr. Meyerson in the Zoom.
Yes, let me, hold on just 1 second. Let me unmute him. Okay, he should be good to go.
Please proceed, Mr. Meyerson.
He's unmuted.
I'll send him a message.
If you can hear me, I can't hear anything. I have no sound on my end. I'm both on my phone and through my computer.
Can you hear us now?
I can. Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Troy Meyerson, 409 South 17th Street, Omaha, Nebraska. I am appearing on behalf of the applicant, the Omaha Performing Arts Society. We're very excited about the campus expansion project for which we're here today before you, asking for approval of items 9, 10, and 11 on today's agenda. Phase 1 of the campus expansion project will be a live music venue that will hold a standing audience of up to 3,000 people. I know that we have some visual aids. I'm not sure if
Stand
those
by.
can be shown or not. If not, that's okay. You have a site plan, I know, in our application.
Yeah, just give the clerk a second. She's going to pull them up, and then we'll let you know when they're up.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, please proceed.
That's great. So what you see here is the front elevation of the live music venue. That's phase 1. That's what I was just describing a moment ago. And then if you go to the next, this is the site plan. So you see on the north side of Dodge Street is the live music venue, phase 1, which you just saw the front elevation. On the south side of Dodge Street, you see what will be phase 2, which is an education center, which we're also very excited about. That education center will help us to provide a lot more community education opportunities for people in the area. Right now, the Holland Performing Arts Center is at capacity really for its educational opportunities. And so we're real excited about phase 2 as well. So if I can answer any questions for you, council members, I'm happy to. But hope that you'll vote in approval of items 9, 10, and 11. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed. Councilmember Festerson, you're recognized.
Thanks, Mr. President. I'm supportive of this item too, and appreciate that overview. Mr. Meyerson, if you could just comment on timeline, and is everything still on track?
Thank you, Councilmember Festerson. Yes, we are on track. I think the last I heard would be that construction would be commenced towards the end of summer, and still on track for opening in 2023, which has always been our expected opening.
Great, thank you. Well, it's an exciting new venue for Omaha, and I think by then we'll be ready for it. Thank
I
you.
hope so.
Thank you, Councilmember Festerson. Councilmember Harding, you're recognized.
Mr. Meyerson, I just wanted to, if you could just give a quick, I know it's been before us before, but just a quick overview of the funding and the amount of philanthropic support that's going into this venue, and what types of events will be coming to phase one when it's completed.
Sure. So the phase one project is it's just over, I think it's $109 million, and fundraising is underway and has been very successful. And the types of shows that you asked about, it's a 3,000 person venue with that's standing capacity, which is what it's really anticipated to be used primarily for. It has a main floor with sort of a U-shaped balcony to it as well. And the types of shows that will go there are often considered to be shows that may not always be considering the Omaha market necessarily, just because they're looking for a venue of this size, which oftentimes is sort of a hard size to fit.
Thank you. And it's, as you said, I think it's something that lacks or is not something that currently exists in Omaha, and certainly will be another attraction to not only our downtown area, but the metropolitan area in whole. So thank you for that update.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Harding. There's no further lights. What's the pleasure of the council?
There was a motion.
Roll call.
Harding.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson. Gray. Mr. President.
Yes.
Items 9 through 11 are approved, 7-0.
Thank you.
Items 12 to 16 relate to the same project and can be considered together for MCC CIO Edition located southeast of Edward Babe Gomez Avenue and 33rd Street. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. B's communication and support. Items 12 and 13 are ordinances to rezone this property from GO District and HI District to GO District and HI District. Item 14, a resolution to approve the final plat for MCC CIO Edition. Item 15, a resolution to approve a special use permit for a major amendment to a large project to allow college and university facilities in the GO District. Item 16, a resolution to approve the MCC CIO Edition subdivision agreement.
The public hearing on items 12 through 16 begin at this time. Are there any proponents?
Yes, Mr. President, members of the council, Larry Jobin, 11440 West Center Road, appearing on behalf of the applicant, Metropolitan Community College. With me today is Jim Thibodeau, General Counsel of Metropolitan Community College. This proposed rezoning will allow for a new building to be constructed for their automotive program. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Harding.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson. Gray. Mr. President,
Yes.
items 12 through 16 are approved 7-0. Items 17 to 20 relate to the same project and can be considered together for Omaha View Replat 11, located at 3003 and 3004 Miami Street. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. Item 17, an ordinance to rezone this property from R5 35 District to R5 District. Item 18, an ordinance to amend the boundaries of the ACI 1 overlay district to incorporate this property into that district. Item 19, a resolution to approve the preliminary plat for Omaha View Replat 11. Item 20, a resolution to approve the final plat for Omaha View Replat 11.
The public hearing on items 17 through 20 begin at this time. We'll call first proponents, Mr. Morrison, Earhart Griffin. In the-
I'm gonna, let me just unmute him real quick. Okay, he is good to go.
Please proceed.
Is he? He's unmuted.
There's mic problems on his end.
Would you send him a message, please?
Yep. I can, yep. Oh, he's unmuted. We'll unmute him. He's unmuted.
Can you hear
Oh.
us?
I think he just muted himself.
There he goes. Can you hear us, Mr. Morrison?
I can't hear him. Uh-huh.
I think the clerk's sending him a message to that effect.
I don't know why it's not working.
It's working now. We can hear you.
Oh, thank you. I apologize. Name is Terry Morrison with Earhart Griffin and Associates at 3552 Farnham Street. I'm here to represent the owner, 75 North. Here to answer any questions.
Thank you. We have Brian Hanson.
And he did not register in time.
Okay. Are there any other proponents present in the chamber who wish to be heard? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson. Gray. Mr. President,
Yes.
items 17 through 20 are approved 7-0. Items 21 to 25 relate to the same project and can be considered together for West Hampton Park, located southeast of 204th Street and Blondo Parkway. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. Items 21 and 22 are ordinances to rezone this property from DR District and CC District to DR District and CC District. Item 23 is an ordinance to amend the boundaries of the MCC Overlay District to incorporate this property into that district. Item 24, a resolution to approve the final plat for West Hampton Park. Item 25, a resolution to approve the West Hampton Park subdivision agreement.
The public hearing on items 21 through 25 begin at this time. We have Scott Luce registered as the first proponent we'll call on.
Good afternoon. This is Scott Lose with TD2 Engineering and Surveying, 10836 Old Mill Road, representing Greg Stowers and Edward Rose Company. Here to answer any questions you may have regarding the final plat, zoning, or subdivision agreement.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents wishing to be heard? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson. Gray. Mr. President,
Yes.
item 21 through 25 are approved 7-0. Items 26 to 29 relate to the same project and can be considered together for Sutton Place Replat 4, located at 7205 and 7215 Ontario Street. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. Item 26, an ordinance to amend the boundaries of the ACI 4 overlay district to incorporate this property into that district. Item 27, a resolution to approve the preliminary plat for Sutton Place Replat 4. Item 28, a resolution to approve the final plat for Sutton Place Replat 4. Item 29, a resolution to approve the Sutton Place Replat 4 subdivision agreement.
The public hearing on items 26 through 29 begins at this time. Kyle Haas from E&A Consulting, please.
This is Kyle Hazy with E&A Consulting, 10909 Mill Valley Road, Omaha, Nebraska, representing the applicant. I'll make myself available to council if they have any questions.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson. Gray. Mr. President.
Yes.
Items 26 through 29 are approved, 7-0. Items 30 to 32 relate to the same project and can be considered together for R&L Carriers Edition, located northeast of 117th and State Streets. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. Item 30, an ordinance to rezone this property from AG District to GI District. Item 31, a resolution to approve the final plat for R&L Carriers Edition. Item 32, a resolution to approve the R&L Carriers Edition subdivision agreement.
The public hearing on items 30 through 32 begin at this time. Are there any proponents?
Yes, my name is John Mengfrecker with Earhart Griffin, 3552 Farnham Street. I'm representing the applicant, and I'm here for questions on plating, engineering, and zoning. The applicant, Stan Richards, is also here in the audience, and he can talk about the operational characteristics of this project.
Does Mr. Richardson wish to be heard? Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson. Gray. Mr. President.
Yes.
Items 30 through 32 are approved, 7-0. Item 33, an ordinance to rezone property located at 4323 South 33rd Street from R4 35 District to R4 District. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
The public hearing on item 33 begins at this time. Are there any proponents? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Oh my God. Sorry.
Palermo.
Palermo. Oh my God. Festerson. Gray. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 33 is approved, 7-0. Apologies. Item 34, an ordinance to rezone property located at 500 South 18th Street from DS District to CBD District. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
Public hearing on item 34 begins at this time. Are there any proponents? Are there any opponents? Public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson. Gray. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 34 is approved, 7-0. Item 35, an ordinance to rezone property located at 6052 Country Club Road from GC District to R5 District. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
The public hearing on item 35 begins at this time. Are there any proponents? Are there any opponents? Public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson. Gray. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 35 is approved, 7-0. Item 36, an ordinance to rezone property located at 518 South 38th Street from R6 District to R7 District to R7 District. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
The public hearing on item 38 begins at this time. We have Julie Roy registered to speak.
Hi, I'm Julie Roy. I'm just representing Montessori Educational Centers and here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? Public hearing is closed. I would just thank the Roys for their investment in this historic mansion in Blackstone, and as you expand your Montessori operations in the neighborhood, I know there's several people in the neighborhood that are excited about what you're doing there, Julie, and so we want to thank you for that.
You're very welcome. We're very excited.
Roll call.
Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson. Gray. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 36 is approved, 7-0. Item 37, an ordinance to rezone property located at 2886 Bauman Avenue from R4 35 District to R4 District. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
The public hearing on item 37 begins at this time. Are there any proponents? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson. Gray. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed, 7-0. Item 38, an ordinance to approve a PUR overlay district and a GC district located at 119 North 72nd Street, and to approve the development plan. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. B is an amendment to revise the 5 exhibits.
The public hearing on item 38 begins at this time. The first proponent will be Randy Cusack, Lamprey Nearson.
Hello, Randy Kushak with Lamprey Nearson, 14710 West Dodge Road, here on behalf of the applicant, J Development. Also joining me today on the phone or in the meeting is Ryan Spellman with J Development. We're here to answer any questions you may have on this redevelopment project.
Thank you. So, Mr. Kushak, it's my understanding that Mr. Spellman and Mr. Bussard do not wish to speak unless there's questions. Is that right?
That's correct.
Mr. Jareb, this is Ryan Spellman here. Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents wishing to be heard on item 38? Are there any opponents? Public hearing is closed. Roll call.
I got a light on, Mr.
Oh,
Chairman.
I'm sorry, Mr. Festerson, you're recognized.
Thanks, Mr. President. And I support the motion in the second there, of course. I just want to thank the applicant for their persistence on this site. This is right across from the Crossroads property and has been on our agenda for some time. And I know they encountered some site challenges that kind of had a temporary delay, but it'll be a great project, a $19 million redevelopment of the old Furniture Row building right there that's currently boarded up. 159 units, 2 levels of parking, so look forward to getting this moving. My only question to the applicant is expectation on the timeline and completion.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Festerson. Likewise, we are very excited. We appreciate your support, and we can't wait to see this part of Omaha really take off, and we're hoping for the best. As far as timeline goes, I believe that our TIF redevelopment plan is to be approved or is to go before council for public hearing in a few weeks here. I believe that's May 19th. We hope to close on all of our financing shortly thereafter and begin construction shortly thereafter that, with the goal of having units open prior to the UNO 2021 school year, at least having maybe a couple floors open and ready for renting. And I would say completion by fall of 2021.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Roll call.
Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson.
Yes.
Gray. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed, 7-0. As amended.
Roll call.
Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson.
Yes.
Gray. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed, 7-0. Item 39, an ordinance to amend the boundaries of the MCC overlay district to incorporate into that district the property located at 1402 and 1404 North 203rd Street. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
The public hearing on item 39 begins at this time. Are there any proponents? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson.
Yes.
Gray. Mr. President.
Yes.
Items 40 and 41 can be considered together for property located at 3343 and 3347 Ames Avenue. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. Item 40, an ordinance to rezone this property from R5 35 District to LC District. Item 41, an ordinance to amend the boundaries of the MCC overlay district to incorporate this property into that district.
The public hearing on item 40 and 41 begins at this time. Are there any proponents?
Yes, Mr. President, members of the council, Larry Jobin, 11440 West Center Road, appearing on behalf of the applicant. This rezoning really just brings the rezoning into compliance with is actually out there with respect to the building and the types of uses that are on that corner. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson. Gray. Mr. President.
Yes.
Items 40 and 41 are approved, 7-0. Items 42 and 43 can be considered together for property located at 7,000 Mercy Road. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. Item 42, an ordinance to rezone this property from MU District to DR District. Item 43, an ordinance to amend the boundaries of the ACI 265 Overlay District to incorporate this property into that district.
The public hearing on items 42 and 43 begin at this time. The first proponent will be Dawn Danley, DLR Group.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hi. My name is Dawn Danley. I work for the LR Group. I'm representing Father St. Mary, address 6457 Francis Street, Suite 200. I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents wishing to be heard? Are there any opponents? Public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson. Gray. Mr. President.
Yes.
Items 42 and 43 are approved, 7-0.
Thank you.
Item 44, a resolution to approve a special use permit to allow a heliport in a GO district located at 8200 West Dodge Road. The applicant is Children's Hospital and Medical Center. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
The public hearing on item 44 begins at this time. The first proponent is Brian Nielsen, representing the applicant from HDR.
Good afternoon. This is Brian Nielsen with HDR Architecture, Inc., 1917 South 67th Street, speaking on behalf of Children's Hospital and Medical Center. I'm here to speak and answer any questions in regards to the relocation of the helipad to the new Hubbard Center for Children's to maintain their level of care for pediatric patients in and around our community.
Thank you. Did Alvin Cobes wish to speak?
I am. Brian is speaking for us today.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed. Councilmember Harding.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brian, I might have a question or two for you or Alvin. Just to give a little history on this, so there was a temporary permit for the temporary helipad until this moves back to its more permanent location. I believe that permit runs through April of 21. But could you give kind of a timeline or schedule as to anticipated or projected completion of the permanent site?
Yes, sir. That's a very good question. So due to the COVID-19 things that we're all dealing with, we're going to have to going back and looking for a minimal extension to the temporary helipad. The helipad would be up and constructed by June of 2021. So our permit is through April. We'll need a couple of months on that until the new helipad can be constructed and then the temporary helipad removed.
So at some time then you will have to come back through and make that request for the extension?
On the temporary helipad, that's correct.
Okay. Which is, and I appreciate that update. I've had a number of calls and emails asking about how long the temporary nature of the permit would be for. I think there was some hope in the neighborhood because of where it's temporarily located that it was going to move back to its permanent location hopefully sooner rather than later. Understanding of what's kind of gone on in our world in the last few months and knowing that that's going to have an impact on it, I appreciate the knowledge to know that you're going to have to ask for that extension so that I might be able to extend that information to the neighbors.
Yeah, that is correct. We're looking for approximately 3 months at this point.
Okay. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Harding. Roll call.
Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson. Gray. Mr. President,
Yes.
item 44 is approved, 7-0.
Thank-
Item 45, a resolution to approve a special use permit to allow general offices in the GI district located at 7525 North 101st Street. The applicant is JSJ Enterprises LLC. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
Public hearing on item 45 begins at this time. We have Dustin Shropshire for the applicant registered to speak.
Hello, Dustin Shropshire on 6225 North 89th Circle, Omaha, Nebraska, on behalf of JSJ Enterprises in regards to the office building that we're constructing, and I'm present to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson. Gray. Mr. President,
Yes.
item 45 is approved, 7-0. Next, I didn't know if City Council wanted to waive liquor rule number 6 on items 46 to 49.
Roll call.
Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson. Gray. Mr. President,
Yes.
motion passed 7-0. Item 46, an application to consider a Class C liquor license for Foreign Taste located at 14242 4th Street, number 108 to 109, A's Communication Opposition.
The public hearing on item 46 begins at this time. Are there any proponents? Welcome. Name and address, please.
John Agenor, 14242 4th Street, Omaha, Nebraska.
As a proponent, right?
Yeah, proponent, yes, I'm the owner.
Happy to answer any questions.
Yes, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed. Councilmember Melton.
Yes, sir, if you could come back up and just repeat your name. I don't want to pronounce it incorrectly. Ashel. Okay, thank you. And we did receive just one letter of opposition. I know exactly where your location is. You're right there in the shopping area. What kind of restaurant or bar are you going to be?
It's a small wine bistro.
It's a wine bistro?
Wine bistro,
Okay.
featuring 4 different regions and a small little appetizer menu, 10 to 12 things on the menu. So basically, no live music, no DJs. So basically a smaller restaurant that features wine and appetizers.
All right, so a wine bistro, so there shouldn't be any raging parties to disturb the neighbors, I guess is.
No,
okay.
not at all.
Well, I welcome a wine bistro. I look forward to you opening, and I'll have to grab some friends and maybe do a girls' night out at your
Please
place
stop.
when it opens.
Please
So,
stop by.
Thank you. With that, I'll move to approve.
Roll call.
Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson. Gray. Mr. President,
Yes.
item 46 is approved, 7-0. Item 47, an application to consider a Class C liquor license for Big Canvas located at 3624 Farnham Street.
The public hearing on item 47 begins at this time. We have Dwayne Brown registered as a proponent.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Dwayne Brown, 3624 Farnham Street here as representing I am the building owner. And with me today, I have Doug and Kim Rothgeb, 14818 L Street, who are the applicants. So we are available to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents wishing to be heard? Are there any opponents? Public hearing is closed. Second, roll call.
Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson. Gray. Mr. President,
Yes.
item 47 is approved, 7-0.
Thank you.
Item 48, an application to consider a Class C liquor license for Launch Brewing located at 2566 Farnham Street, Suite 102 and 103.
The public hearing on number 48 begins at this time. We have Sean Kelly registered to speak for the applicant.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, members of the council. Sean Kelly, 2804 South 87th Avenue. Here today on behalf of the applicant, happy to answer any questions.
Does Ms. Phelan wish to speak?
No, no, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed. Second, roll call.
Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson. Gray. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 48 is approved, 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 49, an application to consider a Class C liquor license for Yummy 365 located at 3201 Farnham Street, number 6107.
The public hearing on item 49 begins at this time. We have Charles Yin registered to speak as a proponent.
Hello, Charles Yin, 1223 South 11th Street, Omaha, Nebraska, 68108, here to answer any questions you may have about the application.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed. Second, roll call.
Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson. Gray. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 49 is approved, 7-0.
Roll call.
Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson. Gray. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed, 7-0. Consent agenda. Any member of the City Council may cause any item placed on the consent agenda to be removed. Items removed from the consent agenda shall be taken up by the City Council immediately following the consent agenda in the order in which they were removed, unless otherwise provided by the City Council Rules of Order.
The public hearings on agenda items 50 through 67 were held on April 28, 2020. Roll call.
Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson. Gray. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed, 7-0.
The public hearings on agenda items 68 through 89 are today. If you wish to address the City Council regarding these items, please come to the microphone, indicate the agenda item number you wish to address, identify yourself by your name, address, who you represent, and if you are a proponent or opponent. And we don't have anyone registered to speak on these items, correct? No lights. Roll call. Motion.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Melton.
Sorry, I thought I posted it. Mr. Cohen from the Building Commission is here. I'd just ask Mr. Cohen, and I think is Mr. Loeffler here too? Would you mind stepping down? I would just like to confirm what we're actually voting on number 89, because there may have been some misunderstanding earlier today.
Good afternoon, council members. Mr. President, Paul Cohen, Omaha Douglas Public Building Commission Administrator. The Omaha Douglas Building Commission Series 2020B Building Bonds. I'm going to do this if you don't mind.
You're more than 6 feet away, so
Yeah.
please feel free to remove the mask.
My wife has always told me I have a face for radio anyway, so I'm sorry about that. Thank you.
She was right.
They were offered into the market on Thursday, April 29th. The bonds were sold, a principal amount of $109,440,000, with the premium producing an additional $8,883,162.40. Upon closing of this issue, $114 million of the proceeds will be deposited into the project fund for the Building Commission. $3.250 million will go into debt service reserve fund, and $1.067 million will be used to pay costs associated with the sales of the bonds. The true interest cost on the bonds was 3.21, with a final maturity date of December 15th, 2050. It's a 30-year bond. And those are the terms we're asking the council to approve today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And Mr. Oliver, thank you for all your work on this. I think you've had to do it twice now. But it looks like this time we still were able to get a good I guess, a good rate. Would that be it? Would that be fair to say?
Bruce Leffler, Piper Sandler, Omaha, Nebraska. Yeah, we were we consider the interest rate that was retained on these bonds, especially in a historical environment, to borrow money over 30 years at 3.23%, 3.21%. It's very attractive.
I mean,
from the commission standpoint, I mean.
And in your experience at
Yeah.
this point in time, holding out another 6 months or a year, I mean, that could be detrimental to the project. I'm just from a standpoint of the rate. I'm just looking at the interest rate and the payback for bonds of this nature for the taxpayers.
Right. No, understand that, certainly. Just to go back 30 days, you could find a market that was entirely disorganized, with the COVID and everything that was going on from that perspective. We saw normalcy come back to the market over the last 2 to 3 weeks. When we got into market with the bonds last week, it was very attractive. What we're starting to see now is everybody that's seeing the market coming back to normal, there's much more volume coming into the market. So I think we position these bonds at a very attractive time for everyone concerned, and the fact of the matter of trying to get these meetings scheduled on a timely basis as well to get final approval on them. So,
And that my point was, in this kind of market,
yes,
waiting would not do the taxpayers any good. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's very little, I'll put it this way, there's very little information in the marketplace currently that says if you wait, you're better off.
At a 3.21%
At a 3.21%,
interest.
right.
Okay, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I understand there's no guarantees.
There's
You're
no
in the
guarantees,
market. Chris German, I would say, when somebody says, "What are my chances of winning a trial?" You can't put a percentage on that. You can't give anybody their chances. But I can tell you, this looks good for the amount of bonds and for the taxpayers. Yes. So I want to thank you. And the reason I'm making that point is, and I think Councilmember Harding has his light on too. Councilmember Harding and I disagreed. We disagreed completely with adding the juvenile detention center to the courthouse annex. We made those arguments, and ultimately the county voted and the building commission voted, and Mr. Harding and I did not get our way. Moving on now, we do have the bonds. We had purchased them previously, which fell through based upon an appeal that was filed. So currently at this point, we've already paid for the purchasing of the bonds. Today, all we're voting for, whether you like the project, don't like the project, want the project, don't want the project, it's actually not relevant to today's vote. Today's vote is, do you approve a 30-year bond rate at 3.21%, or do you think Mr. Leffler is somehow taking advantage of taxpayers, getting us that good of an interest rate? So I just wanted to be really clear about what the vote is on today, because I think that there was maybe some miscommunication even with others outside this room. So I just wanted to make it clear, we're voting on whether to approve the terms of this. Past votes are already done. And so I want to thank you both for bringing it to us, and actually during this pandemic, actually taking the time and putting forth the efforts into trying to get the taxpayers the best interest rate on a bond of this magnitude. So that would be the reason I'm voting yes today. I didn't support the project initially, but unfortunately that was done. So I do support the terms that you've brought to us today, though.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Melton. Councilmember Harding.
Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you, Councilmember Melton, for clarifying what it is we are voting on today, because I wanted to make sure that was clear. This is not about the project itself. It's about the terms of the sale of the bond. And just maybe for the record, Mr. Cohen, just maybe remind us how these bonds then are paid for.
The bonds will be amortized by the county in a form of rent that they'll be charged. It's a interest-only payment until May of 2024, at which point they will pick up principal and interest for the balance of the bonds until they're either paid off or refinanced.
And paid by the county?
The county, Douglas County will bear the brunt. That's in the 17 supplemental agreement. That's part of the resolution that you all approved I forgot when, but way back when, prior
it
to
was a while
July of
ago,
last
right.
year.
Okay, well, thank you. So again, I just want to make sure that, as has been pointed out and now beat to death, that this is not about the project itself, it's about the sale of the bonds. And I appreciate your comments and Mr. Leffler, your efforts on this as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Harding. Is there a motion? Okay. Right. Yes. Right. So we have Councilmember Pauls is having a technology issue, wishes to be recognized.
Going over there.
And we'll get to you, Mr. Storer. We'll get to you. Hold on. There you go.
Am I here?
Yes.
Well, I have a question. Could I have somebody come down? I just need a little explanation on this.
Paul Cohen, Administrator, Public Building Commission.
Paul, approximately, because this has been somewhat a controversial issue at times, how much of this is going to to the courthouse, approximately the bond issue? I'm trying to figure out how much.
Oh, what the costs are approximately?
Yes.
Yeah, right now, the cost of the courthouse are somewhere in the neighborhood of 90 million, maybe 95.
Okay, 95, and what else are we purchasing with the rest of the bond?
Right now, the estimate on the detention center would be the balance or somewhere in the neighborhood of 20, 15 to 20.
Okay, I really want to make that clear, because the majority of this money is going to what part would be the courthouse?
Thank you for making that question, Council Member. That's an excellent question. Majority of the money would be for the courthouse and the site improvements.
Right, and sometimes there's been some, because of the other issue, but we need a courthouse, and this is one way of getting it, is it not?
That is correct. Thank you, Councilman.
Yeah, so I think when we take a look at this total bond issue, we need to keep in mind that the majority, what I would say, close to 90% of this is going for the courthouse.
That's correct.
So for those people who have some disagreement with this, they ought to realize that we're getting a courthouse. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We still have members of the public wishing to be heard. Any other proponents or opponents wishing to be heard on any of the items on the consent agenda, please come forward.
Larry Storer, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha 68132. I'd just like to comment that under Open Meetings Act and the spirit of public service, that words matter a lot, and I just find it very distressing that on the printed agenda here and in the discussions at on that side of the podium and in the discussions this morning, that we try to avoid the word Justice Center and juvenile jail and kids jail. The public doesn't want it. And I guess we can't do anything about it now. But at least we can ask for more favorable terms. But before you spend the money on a juvenile center that maybe won't be needed at all, and ask for money from the federal government to help pay for streets and various other things, maybe you should do more due diligence to the things you're spending money on, so you don't have to ask for more. And then please use the words that we want to hear. The citizens don't know what you're talking about on that agenda. It won't hurt us. You can use the words juvenile jail. If we need a courthouse, we need a courthouse. We've been trying to fight you on the juvenile jail part of it, and obviously we're unsuccessful. We don't even get to vote on it. But it is election time, and we want better terms on this bond issue or whatever you're doing with the money, because it's probably coming out of my billfold one way or another. But we want to avoid letting the citizens know what's going on. For God's sakes, don't be afraid to use the words. Thank you.
Are there any other proponents or opponents wishing to speak on the consent agenda? The public hearing
Mr.
is
President, I just want to,
closed.
clarify after that what
Councilmember Melton, you're recognized.
what Mr. Harding was trying to clarify. We, the city, are not spending the money. These are bonds that are going to the Douglas County Building Commission, and they are going to be paid for by the county. If the county so chooses to just build the courthouse in the future and not build the detention center, they are free to do so, but the city has nothing to do with it, nor will we be paying for it. Thank you.
Thank you. You're out of order. Is there a motion?
We had a motion, we just need a second.
Is there a second? No further lights, roll call.
Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson. Gray. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Item 90, an ordinance levying a special tax and assessment on all lots and pieces of real estate within roadway maintenance district 2019-04 to cover the cost of constructing and improving North 89th Circle from Burt Street north to the end of the cul-de-sac by asphalt overlay. A's amendment of the whole requested by Councilmember Festerson.
Councilmember Festerson, you're recognized.
Thanks, Mr. President. Just a quick word on the amendment filed there. We've discussed this project a lot before, so I won't get into all the details unless there's any questions, but the amendment merely extends the 50% match to the 50% design of the product as well. And it would take the assessment from property owners from about $9,000 to about $6,000. And so it's welcomed by the neighborhood and also supported by the department. And I would go ahead and move the amendment of the whole.
Roll call.
Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson. Gray. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Item 91, an ordinance levying a special tax and assessment on certain lots, parts lots, and pieces of real estate to cover the cost of constructing sidewalks in SWR District 2019-01. A's amendment of the whole requested by the Public Works Department.
Roll call.
Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson. Gray. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Item 92, an ordinance to acquire private property for the purpose of the 177th and Manderson Sanitary Sewer Project.
The public hearing on item 92 begins at this time. Are there any proponents? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed.
Item 93, an ordinance to approve a redevelopment agreement with the Omaha Performing Arts Society for the construction of a music venue on the block between Capitol Avenue and Dodge Street and 11th Street and 12th Street.
The public hearing on item 93 begins at this time. Are there any proponents? Are there any opponents?
Troy is.
Mr. Meyerson, you're recognized.
Troy Meyerson, 409 South 17th Street, on behalf of the applicant, here to answer any questions.
Thank you. The public hearing is closed.
Non-action items, items 94 through 116 do not require a public hearing or city council consideration at this meeting, but will be placed on a future agenda for public hearing and or vote. The reason for non-action is noted after the item on the agenda, as well as the date the item is expected to appear on an agenda for consideration.
Roll call.
Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson. Gray. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0.